Welcome everybody to a very special podcast episode here we got going. I am your host as usual, Dean Bowling. Today I'm joined by the one and only Joe Johnson.
Hello.
Once again, my good buddy who actually knows something about video games. As you can tell by the title of the podcast, my contacts are messing up. And we are doing best games of the generation. I think this is a good time to do it as the generation is coming to a close. Obviously, I think one of the best games of the generation has yet to come in GTA 5. But we're just gonna go ahead and record this podcast. We'll actually have Joe here in town with me. So basically, what we're gonna do here for the next 15 to 30 minutes, maybe shorter than that, is we're gonna go down a list we each have. Excuse me.
You're excused, Dean.
Currently eating pizza. We're going to go down a list of some of the best games of this generation. That encompasses 360, Wii, PlayStation 3, and we're going to consider DS this generation as well. But I don't even know if we have any DS games, but just throwing that out there. And yeah, just go down the list, talk about it, and see if Joe and I agree, disagree, or whatever. So, yep. Rolling off... So these are in no particular order, though I probably will say whether the game is like my favorite or what am I saying? All right, anyway, just let's go on.
All right, I guess I'll start it off. My first choice was Mass Effect 2.
Stealing one off my list, I see.
I played the whole series, and Mass Effect 1, obviously a great game. Mass Effect 2, I think perfected everything that the first one didn't have it. And then the third one, I thought it was a good closest series, even though other people disagree.
Yeah.
I understand their complaints, but I still enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that just 2... I thought 2 was the essence of Mass Effect. I thought you went to a wide variety of different environments. I thought you saw a cool view of all the aliens. I just thought 2 was the best of Mass Effect.
Totally agree with you. That's easily my favorite of the series. I think that's one of the best available games to get on the 360, even though it is available on other platforms or other platforms. And yeah, the first one, I feel like it kind of suffers from the same thing that, I know you'll disagree with me, but same thing that the Uncharted series had. First one was really good, sub a base for it. Second one peaked, and then the third one was just kind of lived in the shadow of the second one. And didn't really do too much different than the second one. But I'm not a huge fan of the first one, but I do like the third one a lot. And I'm really, the second game is very good. So,
I've yet to play Uncharted 3, and I think I could never decide which between the first and the second I like best. I think I choose first, but I can still understand how you choose second, because I think they're pretty close.
So, yeah, I guess we don't need to talk about Uncharted 2 that much more, but that was on my list. That's one of my favorite PS3 games. Not my favorite. Not my favorite. What am I trying to say? It's not. Yeah. But we'll talk about my favorite PS3 game later, maybe on a different podcast.
Ooh.
So move on. This is a game you and I actually talked about in the car on the way to get pizza. This game is my favorite of the generation. One of my favorite of all time. Elder Scrolls 4: Oblivion.
See, like we said earlier, I'll disagree with you. I think it was a good game. I mean, I can't really say it's the base because there was Morrowind before that, and then ones before that, which have never even played, and I didn't play Morrowind either. But I think Oblivion, it was a fun game overall. It was a fun journey, but I think it had too many flaws. I think weapon condition was just so stupid. I thought the way the enemies leveled up with you, I think it was a little too buffed.
Yeah.
Skyrim fixed that. I'll let you talk about what you like.
Yeah, it's definitely got its flaws, but as I mentioned this to you earlier, but it doesn't really seem to matter too much. It was a very early game in the console generation. I think it came out in late 05, early 06, maybe. It was one of the first games I ever played on the 360. Also has amazing DLC. It doesn't have a lot of it, but I think Elder Scrolls 4 Shivering Isles is just as good as Elder Scrolls 4 itself.
Yeah, I will agree. Knights of the Nine, all those other small ones, I don't think they were that noteworthy, but Shivering Isles was definitely a great thing for the game because it was just such a different twist on it. Like, it was still the basics, but thrown in such a different environment. Like
The
you
environment
go through
was
caves
great,
with like
yeah.
giant mushrooms, all this very fantasy stuff. Where Oblivion's already pretty fantastical and stuff if you look at it like that. But adding in this extra little like Alice in Wonderland kind of
That's good
aspect, I thought that Shivering Isles was definitely a shining point for Oblivion.
And it's like, I don't want to linger on Oblivion too much, but I think everyone, or not everyone, a lot of people would probably put Skyrim, like everyone knows Skyrim. Like I don't even know if people know it as an Elder Scrolls game, they know it's just as Skyrim.
Skyrim's actually on my list, so
Is it? Oh
yeah.
god. But yeah, like I think Skyrim didn't hit home for me as much because I think a lot more people experienced as Skyrim, just that huge open world, fantastic place to just explore. I think I got my fill of that in Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. I still think Skyrim's a great game, but I don't know, it just didn't have that punch that Elder Scrolls 4 had for me. So, do you want to say one of your games, Joe?
Yeah, my next game is Dead Space, and this is the first one. I recently finished up Dead Space 3, finishing up the series for me, and honestly, it's a great series for like this generation of platforms. But I think Dead Space 1 was just not revolutionary, but just a nice breath of fresh air in the horror series, because you had Resident Evil, which is generally becoming less horror, and I mean Dead Space series did end up doing that, but I thought the first Dead Space, you have great controls, you have a clunky Isaac Clarke, which I think is good. I think when I say clunky, I mean he's not very agile and nimble, and I think that only adds to the horror aspect. Yeah. The weapons I thought was pretty cool. Like you never have too much ammo, but then you have guns certain like the contact beam, which is a great weapon, but it takes us a long time to charge up. I just think that Dead Space 1, the environments, the weapons, the horror aspect, I thought Dead Space 1 did a really good job. Dead Space 2 was a lot of fun. Dead Space 3 came close, but it just, the ending to Dead Space 3 was very uncharacteristically Dead Space. So.
Really? I haven't played Dead Space 3, but I agree with you. I played Dead Space 1 and 2, and I liked them a lot. I know you as a huge survival horror guy.
Yeah.
So, moving on. What was my game of the year for 2011, which, when you look back, 2011 was a ridiculously good year for games like Portal 2, Skyrim, Saints Row the Third, and this little game, which I consider to be a little underrated, Rayman Origins. I've never really been a big Rayman guy before this game, and kind of took it back to its 2D platforming roots. Absolutely beautiful game, as you know, in my top 10 favorite video game music list. It contains one of my favorite video game tracks of all time. Joe, have you played Origins yet?
I haven't. I've asked to borrow it many times, but Dean here has always just avoided it. But it definitely looks like a good game. I think that in terms of platformers, it definitely looks kind of fresh. But I haven't played it, so I can't comment too much on it.
Yeah. So, you want to read off another one of yours?
Yeah, my next one, which I'm sure it's on Dean's list, Fallout 3.
Yep.
Fallout 3 is just such a great game. I mean, I like Fallout more than the Elder Scrolls series, even though I do like Skyrim a whole lot. But even though I prefer like medieval environments over post-apocalyptic, I still think Fallout just hit the nail on the head. Everything about it, it's just such a great world. You have the contrast between like, was it 1950s US? Like that's like the whole kind of like music style of everything.
The music in that game, that's unfair. I still keep the soundtrack on my phone. Yeah.
I have a Spotify playlist of it, but it's just like everything 1950s America set in a post-apocalyptic Washington D.C. I thought was just very nicely done. The VAT system is absolutely new, and it just looks so cool. Yeah,
I take a stance on this, the same stance I take on Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. I like Oblivion more than I like Fallout 3, but I think Fallout 3 is a better game. So, excuse me, a little rough in my throat. But yeah, I think, a lot of things, it's obviously built off the same engine, and a lot of gameplay aspects, not necessarily gameplay, but just how the game works, was built off of Oblivion. But yeah, Fallout 3, I fell in love with that environment, and like I said, the music is just fantastic. And I don't know how big you are on it, but the DLC, I thought the DLC they had a lot of it, and very solid DLC for Fallout 3 as well.
I think the DLC, it didn't help make Fallout 3 because Fallout 3 was already just standalone. It was still magnificent, but I think that the DLC, most of it, just added to it.
Also, but you have to consider, without the Brotherhood of Steel? Broken Steel, you couldn't even continue. That was my biggest pet peeve about the game, was that you couldn't continue after the end of the game. But when they added that just pushed the game over.
Broken Steel, I think Broken Steel and Point Lookout were definitely the best DLCs
was a lot
because Broken Steel, it gave you the 30 level, the extra 10 level cap, which you definitely need because you hit level 20 real early. And then also continuing on the story, I thought the missions weren't that good, but I thought that it was still better closure than the ending of the game. Yeah. But Point Lookout was just top notch. You got a whole new little map, a great, just different environment from what you've been playing in the whole time. It's a marsh when you've been in a city. Mm-hmm. Mothership Zeta, wasn't a fan of it.
I know. I was going to bring up. I know a lot of people aren't fans of Mothership Zeta. I personally liked Mothership Zeta a lot.
I mean,
it was goofy and just dumb.
I did like the goofiness of it. I mean, it's just, I felt like it was a little too long, which, I mean, I guess you can't really complain because the DLC kind of went to be long. Yeah, I'll take the last piece. But it was definitely cool. The new weapons, the closure on the alien that you might have found in the Wasteland earlier, I thought that was cool. The pit was an oddball. It was still fun, though. And then Operation Anchorage, even though it was short, definitely cool because it wasn't post-apocalyptic anything. It was like a simulation of Alaska during the war, which I thought was
they all did a good job of like switching up the environment, and keeping it fresh. All right, let's see. I was saving Fallout 3 because I knew you were going to bring it up. My 2012 game of the year, XCOM: Enemy Unknown. I know, Joe, you haven't played it. You and I talked about this in the car as well. It's usually a game that I probably wouldn't like, a turn-based strategy type, over-the-top type game. I don't really have too much to say. It's just like, I just love that bond you created with your soldiers. I know.
Except you had me die.
Yeah, Joe died. Joe died early on, and one of my leading soldier was a guy in real life I hate. I don't even know why I named a soldier after him, but yeah. And I know Avery, Jared's little brother, is currently playing it right now, and he's having the same experience I had, where he's naming players, or he's naming soldiers, and he's losing them, and it's heartbreaking, but really fun game. And that's like, you know, I did a thing that a lot of people do when playing that game, where you get like 8 hours into the game, and if you didn't focus on satellites early in the game, which is an element of it, then you basically lose the game. Like, there's no way you can go further on. So that was one of the few games to where I could literally play 8 hours of it, lose all my progress, and then just immediately start over and then go through it like another 20 hours and beat it. So, my 2012 game of the year.
Quite a statement there, Linwood.
Do you want me going?
Yeah, let me finish chewing.
Okay. Let's look at it. I threw this one in. It's a little quirky, but I feel like since they've died now, but I feel like since they were a big part of our generation, I threw in a music game, specifically Guitar Hero 2. Oh. You and I have argued over this so much, but Guitar Hero 2, it was the last Harmonix made Guitar Hero game. It was the first one I ever played. I still think the controller that came with it, the white, I don't know what it's called, it's over in my closet right now, that is the best, the definitive Guitar Hero controller. I love the soundtrack, even though I didn't even know it at the time, but the soundtrack isn't even original songs, they're actually covers, but they're covered so well. I love that game, great memories, and it has Freebird at the end, which is always fun. Like
Dean said, I'll disagree with him. I thought Guitar Hero 3 was the best. I thought Guitar Hero 3 did a great job. It was Legends of Rock. It was a lot of old stuff mixed with some newer things, but I thought did a good job. I thought the track list was the best. I don't really know about the guitar. I thought it was just a standard guitar. I don't know if it had a better one, but that's my opinion.
Say no, I want your games, Joe.
Alright, my next game up is Castle Crashers.
An arcade title.
Castle Crashers is just I think it's one of the perfect...
It's your favorite arcade title.
Yeah, it's definitely my favorite arcade title. I think it's just a great game because it's a nice little multiplayer beat 'em up that you can play with your friends, but it's set in such a cool world. Like, it's fantasy, all that. Like, I like all that stuff, but then it has so much like humor and just like stereotypes fit in. I think it's just a great game. Has a nice level of difficulty. Like, it's not just mindlessly smashing buttons. There's a lot of that, but definitely helps to have strategy.
Have you played the game by the new developer or the
Battle Block Theater?
Battle Block Theater.
I want to get it with $15 is a little pricey.
Yeah, I didn't mean to say new developer. I meant the game by the developer.
The Behemoth.
Yeah. Behemoth was that RTX, the place I was at. They didn't have anything new, but they actually had Battle Block Theater arcade cabinets there. It was pretty cool, yeah. I've yet to play either of them. I've always wanted to play Castle Crashers, but I kind of felt like I missed its time.
I'd still play it. It's a great game.
So, yeah, but
They also had Alien Hominid, which is... that goes back to a Flash game.
Oh, yeah, I remember playing that on the computer on, like...
It was a tougher Metal Slug, but it was still fun.
Yeah. Okay, what time are we at? 16. All right. Let's just go through a couple quick ones real quick. This one kind of goes into my another podcast that we're gonna do. I guess we can talk about now. The underrated podcast of the generation. Bringing up real quick, Viva Pinata. It's easily my not easily. It's one of my favorite Rare games. Absolutely love the soundtrack by Grant Kirkhope, one of my favorite composers ever. He's a great British man, and I know a lot of people don't really get it. It's kind of like that crowd, like the Animal Crossing crowds, where it's like you either absolutely love it and adore it, or you're just like, I don't get it. It's just like raising pinatas. But I recently, got my first achievement. It was one of my first Xbox 360 games I had. I got my first achievement in it in 2005, or it was either 2005 or like January 2006. A month ago, here in 2013, I went back and got every achievement. So I perfected the game. And so it's funny, if you go and look at the dates of achievements, you see like June 2013 and then like January 2006 was the first one. So yeah, that's one of my favorite games. Joe, you perfected it too.
Yeah, back when I played it, because I think Dean got it for a gift for someone. And
I got it for Jordan as a gag gift. Even though I loved it, he hated it. I got it for him, and he gave it to you.
He gave it to me for free, so I was like, free game, I'll play it. Like Dean said, I fell in love with it. I ended up getting all the achievements within a month, I think, just because I played it. Mm-hmm. And then there was that stupid 50-hour one, which I just ended up leaving my Xbox on for. But
same here.
Yeah, Viva Pinata made my underrated list.
Alright, I guess we'll talk about that maybe a little bit more on the air podcast. Real quick, don't have much to say about it, but Arkham City. That also came out in 2011. That was a great fucking year for games.
I played Arkham City, I think, last November, which it's definitely a great game. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorite games. I thought it was definitely above average, but I thought everything was done well, but it didn't really strike that chord in my heart, you know?
Do you have anything you want to say real quick?
My last one, which we talked about a little earlier, is Skyrim. I thought Skyrim was a more polished Oblivion. I thought it did everything right. I know Dean will disagree, but I just thought after playing Skyrim, I loved it. And I think it's a great game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, take a look at my list. The only ones I have that I didn't get around to was BioShock Infinite, which is currently in the running with Animal Crossing right now for my game of the year. It's a great game. I don't really need to explain. It's an awesome story. I got every achievement in it. And then Bayonetta. It's an awesome game. I really love those type of fighting games. It's super Japanese and just weird. And the sequel's coming out exclusively for the Wii U, which I'm pretty excited about. So
Bayonetta was definitely one of those games that surprised me, because it came out same time as Dante's Inferno, and I always thought Dante's would be better, but then Dante's ended up being not good, and Bayonetta ended up being exceedingly good. So, I mean, if you can get over how crazy your character is, I know that a lot of ladies don't like it, but I think that it's a
strong female protagonist, man.
That's one way to look at it. But I think that it's a fun game to play. It has really great controls, really great fighting. I think it was a fun game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, alright. Well, Joe, thanks for joining me on this podcast. It ran 20 minutes long.
No problem, Dean.
So, thanks for checking out this video podcasting, and check out our other ones that are soon to come out, hopefully. So yeah, thanks again, Joe, for joining me.